The moment I stepped into the abandoned house, a chill ran down my spine. Dust hung in the air like a suspended fog, and the stale scent of decay wrapped around me, pulling me back into a time long forgotten. I flicked on my flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness, revealing cracked walls and sagging floors. The echoes of my footsteps bounced off the peeling wallpaper, reminding me that I was truly alone in this eerie place. Why did I even come here? I muttered to myself, the only response being the creaking of the old house settling. I had heard stories about this place, tales of things that had happened long before I was born. Dusty Hollow had a reputation, and it wasn't just urban legends that kept people away. It was the mystery of the Graves family. I had always been curious about my ancestry, but standing in this forsaken house, I felt the weight of the past pressing down on me. I moved cautiously through the dimly lit rooms, my heart racing with every step. The floorboards groaned beneath my weight, and I could almost hear the whispers of the past, like echoes of memories trapped within these walls. As I stepped into what appeared to be a study, I noticed a large, ornate bow in the corner, covered in layers of dust. It looked out of place, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it. "Here goes nothing," I said aloud, trying to quell the rising anxiety. I knelt beside the bow and brushed off the dust, revealing intricate carvings of flowers and vines. With a deep breath, I lifted the heavy lid. The hinges protested, but the sound faded into the silence of the room. Inside, I found a collection of old photographs, yellowed with age and various personal items. My fingers trembled as I picked up a locket, feeling the cool metal against my skin. "Whose were you?" I whispered, imagining the stories behind each item. My curiosity piqued. I rummaged through the contents until my hand brushed against a folded piece of paper. It was a letter worn and fragile, yet the handwriting was still legible. I could feel my heartbeat quicken as I carefully unfolded it. "Dear Samuel," it began. My mind raced. Samuel Graves. The name sent a shiver through me, igniting a spark of intrigue. The letter spoke of a young woman, someone who had vanished without a trace, and of secrets that threatened to destroy everything. As I read, my brow furrowed in confusion. "What happened to you?" I asked the empty room, my voice barely above a whisper. The letter mentioned a town meeting, a gathering shrouded in darkness, where decisions were made that altered the course of lives. I could almost hear the whispers of the townsfolk, the tension in the air as they discussed the fate of those they deemed expendable. As I continued reading, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. The letter hinted at a connection between Samuel and the young woman, suggesting a love that transcended the shadows of Dusty Hollow. But it also spoke of a crime, a tragedy that had remained unresolved. I couldn't help but feel drawn to the mystery, as if it were calling out to me. Why would they keep it a secret? I pondered, the weight of the letter heavy in my hands. I glanced around the room, feeling the oppressive atmosphere closing in. This was more than just a story. It was a piece of my family's history, intertwined with the dark legacy of this town. With newfound determination, I stood and tucked the letter safely into my jacket pocket. I had to know more. I couldn't just walk away from this. I had to uncover the truth behind the disappearance, to understand what had happened to that young woman, and how it connected to Samuel Graves. "Dusty Hollow," I said, my voice echoing off the walls. "You have secrets to reveal." I took one last look around the room, absorbing the remnants of a life once lived, before making my way back to the entrance. The door creaked ominously as I stepped outside, the cool air hitting my face like a refreshing splash of water. The town lay before me, shrouded in an unsettling silence. I knew I couldn't tackle this alone. I needed help, someone who understood the history of Dusty Hollow and could aid me in my quest for answers. Clara could be the key to unlocking the mystery. She was knowledgeable about the town's past, and perhaps she had heard whispers of the Graves family and the girl who had disappeared. As I made my way toward the main street, my mind raced with thoughts of what I had discovered. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was so much more to the story, hidden beneath layers of fear and silence. The townspeople were likely aware of the secrets that lingered in the shadows, but they were reluctant to share, perhaps terrified of what the truth might unveil. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached the library, its exterior a weathered reminder of the past. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and ink as I pushed through the heavy doors. Inside, Clara was organizing a stack of books at the front desk. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she glanced up, a smile breaking across her face when she saw me. "Jake, what are you doing here?" she exclaimed, her blue eyes sparkling with curiosity. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I might as well have," I replied, a hint of urgency in my voice. "You won't believe what I found in the old Graves house." I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. "It's about Samuel Graves and a girl who went missing." Clara's interest piqued immediately. "Really? What did you find?" She leaned against the desk, her expression shifting to one of concern and intrigue. I pulled out the letter, carefully unfolding it and handing it to her. As she read, I could see her brow furrow in concentration. "This is incredible," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've heard rumors about the Graves family, but I never knew there was a connection to a disappearance. I need your help," I said, my voice steady but filled with urgency. "I want to dig deeper into this. There has to be more information, something that can shed light on what really happened." "Of course," she replied, her determination matching mine. "I've always been fascinated by the history of Dusty Hollow. Let's see what we can find out together." "Thank you," I breathed, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. With Clara by my side, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We would uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried. "Let's start with the archives," Clara suggested, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "There might be old newspapers or records that mention the disappearance or the Graves family." We spent the next several hours combing through dusty tomes and yellowed newspaper clippings, piecing together fragments of the town's history. As I sifted through the papers, I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me, the stories of the lost intertwined with my own. "This town has its secrets," I mused aloud, "but why does everyone seem so afraid to talk about them?" Clara sighed, her gaze distant. "Fear of the past can be powerful, Jake. Sometimes people would rather keep their heads down than face the truth, especially when it involves something as dark as a disappearance." I nodded, feeling the gravity of her words. "But we can't let this go. If there's a chance we can bring closure to the family, or at least understand what happened, we have to try." She looked at me, her expression resolute. "You're right. Let's keep digging. There's got to be something here that connects the dots." As we continued our search, I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. Each piece of information we uncovered brought us closer to the truth, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that we were treading on dangerous ground. Dusty Hollow held its secrets tightly, and I had a sinking feeling that the deeper we dug, the more perilous our journey would become. "Jake," Clara called, pulling me from my thoughts. "Come look at this." She pointed to a newspaper article dated decades ago, the headline reading, "Mysterious Disappearance Shrouded in Secrecy." I leaned over her shoulder, my heart racing as I scanned the text. The article detailed the disappearance of a young woman who had been last seen near the Graves estate. The details were sparse, but there was a sense of urgency in the writing, a plea for answers that had never come. "This is it," I said, my voice filled with conviction. "This has to be connected to the letter." Clara nodded, her eyes wide with realization. "We need to follow this lead. We can't let this slip away." With that, I felt a fire ignite within me. I was no longer just a curious descendant of the Graves family. I was a seeker of truth, determined to unearth the dark secrets that had haunted Dusty Hollow for far too long. I stepped into the dusty, dimly lit interior of the abandoned house, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the thick air. The silence was palpable, broken only by the soft crunch of my footsteps on the wooden floor, which creaked in protest under my weight. It was as if the house was hesitant to reveal its secrets, holding tightly to the memories that lingered within its walls. Dust motes danced in the light, and I felt the weight of history pressing down on me. As I moved deeper into the house, I was struck by the sight of cobwebs draping the corners like forgotten curtains. The entire place exuded an aura of neglect, but there was something that drew me in, a pull that felt almost magnetic. My heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation as I explored the remnants of a life long gone. I could feel that something significant awaited me. Then I spotted it, a weathered trunk sitting forlornly in the middle of the room, its brass hinges tarnished with age. My curiosity piqued. I knelt beside it and carefully lifted the lid. The trunk creaked open, revealing a jumble of old photographs, faded letters, and trinkets that spoke of a past I had only glimpsed through family stories. My fingers brushed over the items, each one a tangible connection to my ancestry. But it was the letter, yellowed and fragile, that caught my attention the most. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter. The words were written in a flowing script, and as I read, my heart sank. It mentioned Samuel Graves, a name that had echoed throughout my childhood as part of the town's dark history. My mind raced as I pieced together the fragments of the narrative. The crime that had haunted Dusty Hollow for decades, and the young woman's mysterious disappearance. The connection felt too close, too personal, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the precipice of a revelation that could change everything. My thoughts whirled as I finished reading. I had to know more. I needed to uncover the truth behind this letter and the secrets it held. Dusty Hollow, with its shadowy past and whispered rumors, beckoned to me. I was determined to dive deeper into the mystery that entwined my family with the enigmatic Samuel Graves. The next day, I found myself standing in front of the local library, its brick facade weathered but inviting. I pushed the door open and was greeted by the scent of old books and polished wood. The librarian, a middle-aged woman with glasses perched on the edge of her nose, looked up from her desk. I approached her, feeling a mix of anticipation and anxiety. "Hi, I'm Jake. I'm looking for information about Dusty Hollow, specifically anything related to Samuel Graves and the young woman who disappeared," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. As I spoke, a figure emerged from the stacks. Clara. She was a local, someone I recognized from around town. Her curiosity was evident as she overheard my inquiry. "Did you say Samuel Graves?" she asked, her eyes widening slightly. "I've heard stories about him and the girl who went missing. There are so many rumors." I nodded, grateful for her interest. "I found a letter that connects my family to him. I want to know what really happened." Clara's brow furrowed as she considered my words. "I've always been fascinated by that story. I'd love to help you with your research. There's so much we can uncover together." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and as we began to dig through the dusty archives, I felt a sense of camaraderie forming between us. We scoured through old newspapers, records, and anything else we could find that might illuminate the shadows of Dusty Hollow's past. "Look at this," Clara said, holding up a fragile newspaper clipping. "This was published right after the disappearance. It says there were whispers of a secret society in town. They were rumored to be involved in all sorts of strange rituals." I leaned closer, intrigued. "A secret society? Do you think they're connected to Samuel Graves or the disappearance?" "Maybe," Clara replied, her voice hushed, as if the walls themselves were listening. "I've heard stories about the Graves family being involved in something dark, something they'd do anything to protect." As we continued our research, Clara's passion for uncovering the truth was inspiring. She shared tales passed down through her own family, stories that hinted at the town's hidden darkness. The more we uncovered, the more questions seemed to arise, and it became clear that we were only scratching the surface. Then, as we rummaged through a pile of old books, Clara's fingers brushed against something unusual. "Wait, what's this?" she asked, pulling out a partially burned diary. Its edges were charred, and several pages were missing, leaving behind an incomplete narrative that felt hauntingly familiar. "This belonged to the girl, didn't it?" I mused, my heart racing at the thought. "If we can decipher what's left, it might give us the clues we need." Clara nodded, her eyes wide with excitement. "Let's take it back to my place. We can examine it more closely there." As we left the library, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced over my shoulder but saw nothing out of the ordinary. A sense of unease settled over me as we made our way through the quiet streets of Dusty Hollow, but I pushed it aside. I had Clara by my side, and together, we were determined to unearth the town's secrets. Once we arrived at her home, we spread the diary across her kitchen table, the flickering light casting shadows that danced mischievously. Clara began to read the diary aloud, her voice steady but tinged with wonder. "I can't believe what I've seen. The rituals they perform in the woods. I must tell someone." She trailed off, glancing at me. What could she have witnessed? I shook my head, feeling a chill run down my spine. I don't know, but it sounds like she was terrified. Whatever was happening, it was serious. As Clara continued to read, I tried to piece together the fragments. Each word felt like a breadcrumb leading us deeper into a forest of secrets. But the more we uncovered, the more the pages seemed to taunt us. The entries were vague, filled with fear and confusion, and the burned edges only added to the mystery. "Look here," Clara pointed, her finger hovering over a passage that had survived the flames. "It mentions a meeting in the woods, a place where they gathered under the cover of darkness. This could be crucial. Do you think we should investigate?" I asked, a mix of excitement and apprehension swirling in my stomach. "Absolutely. If we can find the location, we might uncover more about the society and what happened to her," Clara replied, her determination shining through. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow into the room, I felt the weight of what lay ahead. We were on the brink of something monumental, but the shadows of the past loomed large, reminding us that some truths are buried for a reason. With Clara's resolve igniting my own, I felt a surge of hope. We were not merely unearthing history. We were on a quest for justice, a chance to bring light to the darkness that had shrouded Dusty Hollow for far too long. As I stepped into the dusty, dimly lit house, the beam of my flashlight cut through the thick cobwebs that hung in the corners like forgotten memories. The air was heavy with the scent of mildew and decay, an unsettling reminder that this place had long been abandoned. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on me, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets from the past. The floor creaked beneath my feet as I moved cautiously through the cluttered room, each step echoing in the silence. Then, in the far corner, I spotted a large, ornate trunk. It was partially hidden under a faded quilt, its wood weathered and cracked. My heart raced with anticipation as I approached it. What could be inside? I knelt down and pried open the lid, dust swirling up into the air like tiny ghosts escaping their prison. My eyes widened as I revealed a trove of personal items. Old photographs, trinkets, and letters, each one a fragment of a story long forgotten. But there, tucked beneath a faded photograph of a young couple, was a letter, its edges yellowed with age. I unfolded it carefully, the paper crinkling softly in my hands. As I read the words, my stomach twisted in knots. The letter spoke of a young woman, a name that echoed in my mind, Samuel Graves. I had heard whispers about him in town, tales of a crime that had never been solved. The words in the letter connected him to a mysterious disappearance, a dark thread woven into the fabric of Dusty Hollow. The more I read, the more confused I became. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me, pulling me into its depths. What had happened to this young woman? Why was her fate tied to Samuel Graves? I could sense the urgency of the truth pressing against my chest, demanding to be uncovered. Clenching the letter tightly in my fist, I made a silent vow to myself. I would find out what happened. I would dig into the history of Dusty Hollow, no matter how deep I had to go or how dark the secrets I might unearth. The next day, I made my way to the local library, hoping to find any scrap of information that could shed light on the mystery. As I entered, the smell of old books filled my nostrils, mingling with the faint scent of polished wood. The librarian, an elderly woman with silver hair pulled back into a bun, looked up from her desk. Her eyes twinkled with curiosity as I approached. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice warm yet cautious. "I'm Jake," I replied, I'm looking into the history of Dusty Hollow. I found something about Samuel Graves and a missing girl. Have you heard anything about it? Her expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. Ah, the Graves family. There were always rumors swirling around them. You might want to speak to Clara. She's very knowledgeable about the local history. With a nod of thanks, I turned to search for Clara. I found her in a quiet corner, poring over a stack of books. As I approached, she looked up, her hazel eyes bright with curiosity. Hi, I'm Jake. I introduced myself. I heard you might know something about Samuel Graves and the disappearance. Samuel Graves? Clara repeated, her eyebrows knitting together. I've always been fascinated by that story. There are so many rumors. What do you know? I pulled the letter from my pocket and handed it to her. As she read, her expression shifted from curiosity to surprise. This is quite a find, Clara said, looking back up at me. I've heard whispers about the Graves family and the girl who went missing. They say she had connections to some influential people in town, and her disappearance was never solved. I'd love to help you dig deeper. Grateful for her willingness to assist, we began searching through the library's archives. Hours passed as we combed through old newspapers and clippings about Dusty Hollow's past. Finally, a small, partially burned diary caught our attention. It was hidden away in a corner, its leather cover cracked but still intact. What do you think? Clara asked, her voice tinged with excitement. This could belong to the girl. We carefully opened the diary, but many of the pages were damaged, charred at the edges. The words were barely legible, but we could make out fragments of a life once vibrant and full of promise. The entries spoke of mundane things, a love for nature, dreams of adventure, but there were hints of something darker lurking beneath the surface. Look here, I pointed to a passage that read, "The meetings at the old church are growing more frequent. I fear for what they plan." Clara frowned, her brow furrowing in concern. Meetings? What meetings? This is getting more mysterious by the minute. As we continued to sift through the diary, we knew we were inching closer to the truth. The tension in the air thickened as we exchanged theories about what had really happened in Dusty Hollow. "We need to talk to some of the older residents," Clara suggested. "They might know more about the past, what really happened to her." With a sense of purpose, we ventured out into the town, seeking the few remaining residents who might hold the key to unraveling this mystery. We approached a small diner, its neon sign flickering like a ghost in the fading daylight. Inside, we found an elderly man hunched over a coffee cup, his face lined with the marks of time. "Excuse me, sir," I said, taking a seat across from him. "We're investigating the history of Dusty Hollow, particularly about the Graves family and the girl who went missing. Do you remember anything?" He looked up, his gaze sharp despite his age. "Graves, huh? That name carries weight around here. You young folks should leave that buried. Some things are best left alone." Clara leaned forward, intrigued. "Why? What do you know?" He hesitated, glancing around as if ensuring no one else was listening. "I've heard whispers of Aseda, a cult that operated here. They were influential folk, and they protected their secrets. Rumors say they were involved in the girl's disappearance." My heart raced at the mention of the cult. "A cult? What kind of activities did they engage in?" "Rituals, dark ones," he replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They said the girl knew too much. She got too close to their secrets. And the Graves family? They were right in the middle of it all." I exchanged a glance with Clara, a mix of excitement and fear flooding through me. We were onto something significant, but the danger felt palpable. "What happened to the cult? Are they still here?" Pressed. "Some say they still meet in the old church," he replied, his eyes narrowing. "But you best be careful. Digging into this could bring trouble." Thanking him for his time, Clara and I left the diner, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. We decided to check out the old church he had mentioned. As we approached the building, a chill ran down my spine. The structure loomed in front of us, its weathered stones seeming to whisper secrets of the past. Inside, We were greeted by the musty scent of wood and the faint sound of dripping water echoing through the hollow space. Dust motes danced in the beams of light filtering through the stained glass windows, casting eerie shadows. We found a mural on the far wall, depicting the town's history. "Look at this," Clara said, pointing to the mural. "It tells the story of Dusty Hollow, but it looks like some parts have been altered." I stepped closer, examining the changes. "It's as if someone wanted to hide something," I murmured. "Could it be related to the girl?" Just then, an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I could sense that we were not alone. As we turned to leave, an old man stepped out from behind a pillar, his face worn and weary. "Best you two be careful," he warned, his voice gravelly. "Some truths are better left buried. You don't understand what you're getting into." "Why? What do you mean?" I asked, feeling a mix of frustration and fear. He shook his head, his eyes darkening. "Dusty Hollow has its ghosts. Leave them be, or they'll come for you." His words hung in the air like a warning bell, and as we stepped back into the daylight, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were now entangled in something far more dangerous than we had anticipated. The shadows of the past were closing in, and I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it would cost. The air was thick with dust as I stepped into the house, my flashlight beam slicing through the shadows. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on me, the remnants of a life once lived lingering in the corners like ghosts. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, and I winced at the sound, feeling like an intruder in a forgotten world. Dust motes danced in the light, swirling in patterns that felt almost alive. As I moved deeper into the house, I spotted a large old trunk nestled against the wall. It was covered in a thick layer of dust, suggesting it hadn't been touched in years. My heart raced as I approached it, curiosity overpowering any sense of caution. I knelt down and lifted the heavy lid, the hinges protesting with a rusty groan. Inside, I found an assortment of items. Yellowed photographs, trinkets, and letters, all meticulously packed away. Then, my eyes landed on it. A letter, its edges frayed and the ink faded but still legible. I carefully pulled it out and unfolded it, my heart pounding in anticipation. As I began to read, the words blurred momentarily, my mind racing to process the implications. The letter spoke of a young woman, a name that resonated like a tolling bell: Samuel Graves. My brow furrowed in confusion. Who was she, and what did she have to do with the crime that had haunted Dusty Hollow for decades? The letter hinted at a mystery, a connection between her disappearance and the dark secrets buried within the town's history. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized I was holding a piece of a puzzle that had been untouched for far too long. Determined, I made a silent vow to uncover the truth behind Dusty Hollow and the fate of the young woman whose life seemed so entwined with my own family's past. The next day, I found myself in the town's library, a place that smelled of old books and forgotten stories. The scent was comforting as I began to sift through the archives, desperate for more information. That's when I met Clara. She was a petite woman with bright eyes that sparkled with curiosity, and as she approached me, I could sense an eagerness to assist. "What brings you here?" Clara asked, her voice warm yet inquisitive. "I'm researching a case related to Samuel Graves," I replied, trying to gauge her reaction. Her eyes widened slightly, and she leaned in closer. "I've heard stories about the Graves family. There are whispers about a girl who went missing. Do you have any leads?" I nodded, pulling the letter from my pocket to show her. As I unfolded it, I recounted the details I had found. Clara listened intently, her expression shifting from intrigue to concern. "I've always thought there was more to that story. People in this town are tight-lipped about the past, especially when it comes to the Graves. I can help you look for more information." Together, we dove into the dusty shelves of the library, combing through newspapers and old records. Hours passed, and just as my hope began to wane, Clara's eyes lit up as she pulled a charred diary from a box. This was partially burned, but it belonged to the young woman from the stories, she said, her fingers trembling slightly as she handed it to me. I opened it gingerly, scanning the damaged pages. Fragments of thoughts and emotions spilled out, but many were too charred to decipher. Still, it was something, a piece of her life. "What does it say?" Clara asked, leaning closer. "I can't make out much, but it seems she was involved in something deeper, something that might have put her in danger," I whispered, feeling the weight of the diary in my hands. As we continued our search, we sought out the few remaining townsfolk willing to share their memories. Most were reluctant, eyes darting as if afraid of being overheard. Finally, an elderly man named Mr. Thompson spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "I remember the Graves family," he said, glancing around as if afraid of being heard. "There were rumors of a cult, a Seta that controlled things in Dusty Hollow. They were influential people, you see. They protected their secrets." "Secrets?" I pressed, intrigued. Mr. Thompson nodded gravely. "Yes, dark secrets. Rites and rituals that no decent person should ever be part of. The girl, she knew too much." Clara and I exchanged glances, a chill creeping up my spine. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the bigger picture was still shrouded in ambiguity. Our investigation led us to an old church on the outskirts of town. The building was crumbling, but inside, the walls were alive with history. We wandered through the dimly lit space and discovered a mural that depicted the town's history, including a section that seemed to have been recently altered, perhaps to hide something. "Look at this," Clara said, pointing. "This part is different from the rest. It's almost like someone tried to erase it." I ran my fingers over the rough surface, tracing the outlines of figures that looked eerily familiar. "Do you think it has something to do with the Seta?" "Possibly," Clara said, her brow furrowed in thought. "But we need to be careful. The townspeople are protective of their stories, and who knows what might happen if we dig too deep." As we left the church, a sense of foreboding settled over me. The weight of the past felt heavier than ever. Just as we reached the library's door, I caught sight of a shadow lurking in the distance. My heart raced as I turned to Clara. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What?" she replied, glancing back. "There was someone watching us," I said, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. We hurried inside, trying to shake the unease that clung to us. As we pored over more documents, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed. The tension hung thick in the air, and I couldn't help but feel like we had stumbled onto something much larger than ourselves, something that wanted to remain hidden. Later, as Clara and I sat in the library, poring over the diary again, she looked up, her eyes wide with realization. "My grandfather, he was involved with the Seta. He never spoke much about it, but I remember him telling stories, mysterious tales about a young girl who knew too much. He always said she had to be silenced." My heart sank as I processed her words. "Do you think your grandfather knew what happened to her?" "I don't know," Clara said, her voice trembling. "But the more we dig, the more dangerous this becomes." Suddenly, a shadow flitted past the window, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. "We need to go," I said, urgency seeping into my tone. "We can't let them see us here." As we hurried out, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if the very walls of Dusty Hollow were closing in on us, holding onto its secrets with a tenacity that was both suffocating and terrifying. With every revelation, I felt the grip of the past tightening around me, and I knew that whatever lay ahead would not only test our resolve, but would also unravel the truth that had haunted this town for far too long. As I stepped into the abandoned house, a shiver ran down my spine. The air was thick with dust, and my flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating cobwebs that hung like the remnants of forgotten memories. Each creak of the wooden floorboards echoed in the silence, reminding me that this place had been untouched for years, a mausoleum of the past. I took a deep breath, the musty scent of decay filling my lungs, and pushed forward, my heart racing with a mix of curiosity and dread. After a few moments of searching, I spotted a weathered chest tucked away in a corner, almost hidden by the shadows. Kneeling down, I brushed off layers of dust and opened the lid. Inside, I found a collection of personal items: old photographs, a cracked mirror, and, most importantly, a letter. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the fragile piece of paper. The ink faded but still legible. I unfolded it carefully, my mind racing with questions. As I read the letter, the words began to weave a story that gripped my heart. The letter spoke of a young woman, a name I recognized from town whispers. Sarah. My fingers brushed the signature, Samuel Graves, and a chill ran through me. Samuel Graves was linked to Dusty Hollow's darkest secrets, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this letter was a key to unraveling a mystery that had haunted the town for decades. Why would my family have this? I murmured to myself, my brow furrowing in confusion. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me, urging me to uncover the truth. With renewed determination, I made my decision. I needed to investigate Dusty Hollow further, to dig deeper into the shadows that had been cast over this town. The next day, I found myself in the local library, a quaint building that smelled of old books and history. As I entered, I could feel the eyes of Clara, the librarian, on me. She was a striking woman with an aura of curiosity that seemed to be contagious. I approached her, my heart racing. "Hi, Clara. I found something interesting about the Graves family," I said, trying to gauge her reaction. Her eyes lit up with intrigue. "The Graves family? I've heard stories about them. What did you find?" I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to explain the letter without sounding completely insane. "I found a letter in an old house. It mentioned a young woman who disappeared years ago, and it was signed by Samuel Graves." Clara's expression shifted to one of surprise. "That's fascinating. I've always heard rumors about the Graves family and the mysterious disappearance. I'd love to help you with your research." Together, we pored over old newspapers and city records, piecing together fragments of a puzzle that had long been buried. It was during one of our visits that Clara stumbled upon a partially burned diary hidden in the back of a dusty shelf. The pages were charred and fragile, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It belonged to Sarah. "Jake, look at this," Clara exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. This diary could hold the key to understanding what happened to her. I leaned over her shoulder, my heart racing as I took in the words. "But it's damaged. We might not be able to read everything." "I know, but there might be something here that can lead us to more information," she replied, her voice filled with hope. As we sifted through the remnants of the diary, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The more we uncovered, the more questions I had. Why had Sarah written about the Graves family? What had happened to her? The atmosphere in the library shifted as we began to sense the weight of the secrets that Dusty Hollow carried. Our inquiries led us to the remaining residents of the town. The few elderly people who still called Dusty Hollow home were reluctant to share their stories. Their eyes darted nervously, as if they feared the very mention of the past. One old man, with a voice like gravel, whispered about a cult that had operated in the shadows of the town. A secret society that had protected their own at all costs. "A cult?" I echoed, glancing at Clara, who looked equally taken aback. "What do you mean?" He leaned in closer, his breath reeking of whiskey. "They were powerful folks, those Graves. You don't want to mess with their legacy. Some things are better left buried." The words hung in the air like a warning, but they only fueled my desire to know the truth. Clara and I decided to visit the old church that stood at the edge of town. It was a place steeped in history, its walls worn and weathered, yet it held a certain allure. As we entered, the smell of aged wood and incense enveloped us. "Look at this mural," Clara said, pointing to a painted scene on the wall. It depicted the town's history, but there were strange symbols woven into the artwork that I had never seen before. "It looks like some parts have been altered recently." I took a step closer, squinting at the details. "You're right. It almost feels like someone is trying to hide something." Just then, the door creaked, and an elderly woman shuffled in, her eyes narrowing as she spotted us. "You two shouldn't be here," she warned, her voice trembling. "Some truths are better left in the dark." Her words sent a chill through me, but I was resolved to uncover the layers of secrecy that cloaked Dusty Hollow. Clara and I exchanged determined glances, We were not going to back down. As we left the church, I sensed a growing tension around us, a feeling that we were being watched. Days passed, and our investigation took us deeper into the heart of Dusty Hollow. I stumbled upon more references to the cult, learning that it comprised influential families, including the Graves. They had been involved in rituals that were both sinister and shrouded in mystery. My mind raced with the implications. What had they done to Sarah? Clara revealed something that sent shivers down my spine. "My grandfather was part of that group," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He used to tell me stories about the cult and how they kept their secrets hidden. I never thought it would connect to Sarah. Did he ever mention her?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "Just that she was important, that she knew things she shouldn't have," Clara replied, her brow furrowing in concentration. "I think she might have been involved in something much larger than we realize." As we delved deeper into our research, I noticed a figure watching us from a distance. It was a shadowy figure, cloaked and indistinct, lingering in the corners of my vision. I felt a growing sense of unease, as if we had drawn the attention of forces that wanted to keep the past buried. Determined to uncover the truth, Clara and I decided to investigate Samuel Graves' old house. The place stood as a testament to a time long gone, its walls echoing with untold stories. As we entered, the air felt charged, and I could sense the weight of history pressing down on us. "Let's look for anything that might lead us to answers," I suggested, scanning the room for anything unusual. We searched through dusty furniture and forgotten memorabilia, and soon enough, we stumbled upon a hidden compartment in a desk. My heart raced as I pried it open, revealing a trove of letters and documents that hinted at darker dealings within the cult. "Jake, look at this," Clara exclaimed, holding up a letter that spoke of clandestine meetings and transactions that involved the Graves. "This could change everything we thought we knew." As we sifted through the documents, a sudden noise from the upper floor sent a jolt of adrenaline through my veins. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my instincts kicking in. "Yeah, we should check it out," Clara replied, her voice steady although I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. We climbed the creaking staircase, each step echoing ominously. When we reached the top, the atmosphere felt charged with tension. I pushed open a door, revealing a dimly lit room filled with remnants of the past. In the corner, I spotted something that made my heart skip a beat: the diary of the young woman. Sarah's diary. I breathed, rushing toward it. We might finally get some answers. As we flipped through the pages, however, a sense of dread washed over me. The last few entries were barely legible, the ink smeared and the words cryptic. "It's almost like she was trying to tell us something important," I murmured, frustrated by the damage. Clara looked at me, her expression a mix of determination and fear. "We need to figure this out. There's a connection here, and we can't let it slip away." With each discovery, the weight of the past pressed heavily on our shoulders. Dusty Hollow had its secrets, and we were determined to bring them to light, no matter the cost. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, Clara and I found ourselves standing at the edge of the forest that bordered Dusty Hollow. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made the hair on the back of my neck prickle. We had spent the last few weeks uncovering layers of secrets buried deep within the town's past, and I could feel the weight of those secrets pressing down on us, like an unseen force urging us to turn back. "Jake," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper, "do you really think we should be out here? What if that shadow we saw before? What if it's still following us?" I turned to her, trying to mask my own unease. "We can't back down now. We're so close to figuring this out. We can't let fear dictate our actions." Clara nodded, though I could see the doubt flickering in her eyes. I can't shake the feeling that someone knows what we're up to. The warnings, the looks from the townsfolk, it's like they want us to stop digging." The forest loomed around us, a dark tapestry of ancient trees and tangled underbrush. The last rays of sunlight flickered against the leaves, creating a play of light and shadow that danced along the ground. "Let's keep moving," I urged, pulling out my flashlight. The beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating a narrow path ahead. As we walked, I couldn't shake the thought that the Seda, the secret cult that Clara had learned about from her granddad's tales, was somehow intertwined with my own family's history. The letter I had found in that dusty old chest had mentioned Samuel Graves, but it had also hinted at something darker, something that seemed to resonate with the whispers of Dusty Hollow itself. "There's got to be a reason why that old man warned us to stay out of it," Clara said, breaking the silence that surrounded us. "He seemed genuinely frightened. Maybe he knows more than he's letting on," I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. "Or maybe he's just trying to protect us. Either way, I'm not going to let fear stop us from finding the truth." Just as I finished speaking, a rustle in the underbrush made us both freeze. I pointed my flashlight toward the sound, heart pounding in my chest. The beam caught a fleeting glimpse of movement, a flash of dark fabric before it vanished into the trees. "Did you see that?" Clara gasped, gripping my arm tightly. "Yeah," I said, my voice low. "It's probably nothing, just an animal." But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Something was out there and it was watching us. "Let's hurry," Clara urged, pulling me forward. "I don't like this place." We quickened our pace, the underbrush crunching beneath our feet as we moved deeper into the woods. The trees began to close in around us, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "If we can just find that old cabin," I said, "I think we might uncover something important." The cabin, a place Clara had mentioned in passing, was rumored to have belonged to one of the original members of the Seda. They said it was where rituals had taken place, where secrets were whispered in the dark. The thought sent a chill down my spine, but curiosity propelled me forward. After what felt like an eternity, we finally spotted the outline of the cabin through the trees. It stood decrepit and forgotten, half hidden by the encroaching foliage. "There it is," I said, pointing ahead. Clara looked at me, a mixture of excitement and fear gleaming in her eyes. "Are you ready for this?" I took a deep breath, trying to summon the courage that had felt so abundant just moments earlier. "We have to be. Whatever's inside could be the key to everything." As we approached, the air grew colder, an unnatural chill seeping into my bones. The door hung ajar, creaking softly in the wind. "It's like it's inviting us in," Clara said, her voice trembling slightly. "Or warning us to stay away," I replied. "Let's go." We stepped inside, our footsteps echoing in the stillness. The cabin was dark and musty, filled with the scent of decay. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like ghostly curtains, and the floorboards creaked ominously under our weight. I aimed the flashlight around, illuminating the remnants of a life long abandoned. Old furniture covered in dust, a fireplace filled with ash, and walls lined with faded photographs. "Look at this," Clara said, her eyes catching something in the corner. She moved closer to what appeared to be a small desk, its surface cluttered with yellowed papers and strange symbols. "These markings, they look like the ones we found in that diary." I stepped beside her, examining the papers. "They're rituals," I said, my heart racing as I translated a few of the words. "Descriptions of sacrifices and offerings." Clara shivered. "Do you think they really practiced these rituals here? What if they did something to that girl? What if she was a part of this?" "Let's not jump to conclusions," I cautioned, though the thought made my stomach churn. "We need to find something concrete. Evidence." As we rummaged through the clutter, a sudden noise echoed from above us. Heavy footsteps, the unmistakable sound of someone moving on the second floor. Clara and I exchanged alarmed glances. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her face paling. "Yeah," I murmured, adrenaline surging through my veins. "We should check it out." "Are you crazy?" she hissed. "What if it's someone from the Seda? We can't just walk into a trap." I hesitated, the reality of the situation crashing down on me. "We can't leave without knowing who or what that is. We need to be brave, Clara." Taking a deep breath, I led the way up the rickety staircase, the wood groaning beneath us with every step. As we reached the top, I shone my flashlight into the dimly lit corridor. The door at the end was cracked slightly open, a faint light seeping through the gap. "Should we knock?" Clara whispered, her voice trembling. "No," I said, my resolve hardening. "We need to see what's inside." I pushed the door open slowly, the hinges squealing in protest. The room was small and cluttered, filled with more dusty furniture and what looked like remnants of some sort of altar. In the center, a large book lay open, its pages filled with strange symbols and writings. "Do you think this is?" Clara began, but her words trailed off as she pointed to a figure standing in the shadows at the far end of the room. I squinted, trying to make out the features of the person. A hooded figure stood there, motionless, as if waiting. The atmosphere thickened with dread as I felt the weight of their gaze upon us. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice echoing in the silence. The figure took a step forward, revealing a face illuminated by the dim light. A familiar face that made my heart drop. "Jake!" Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Samuel Graves!" I breathed, recognition dawning as memories flooded back. "But how?" He raised a hand, silencing me. "You shouldn't have come here. You don't know what you're getting into." "Then tell us," Clara demanded. "What happened to the girl? What do you know about the Seda?" Graves hesitated, his eyes darting nervously, as if he were contemplating whether or not to reveal the truth. "You think you want to know, but trust me, some truths are best left buried." "Why?" I pressed, frustration bubbling inside me. "Because it would ruin your precious reputation? Because you care more about protecting this town's facade than finding justice." He stepped closer, his expression shifting to one of urgency. "You don't understand. The Seda's influence runs deep. If you continue down this path, you'll put yourselves in danger. There are forces at play that are beyond your comprehension." "Then help us understand," Clara pleaded, her voice softer now. "We need to know what really happened." For a moment, there was silence. The tension in the air was palpable, a standoff between us and the man who held the key to the truth. "Fine," he finally said, his voice heavy with resignation. "But you must promise to tread lightly. The truth can be more dangerous than you realize." As he began to speak, the shadows seemed to grow deeper around us, wrapping us in uncertainty. The weight of the past pressed down heavily upon my shoulders, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the precipice of something far darker than I had ever imagined. The sun hung low in the sky as I walked alongside Clara, the weight of the investigation pressing heavily on my shoulders. We had been digging into the past of Dusty Hollow, and every revelation felt like a shard of glass cutting deeper into my curiosity and guilt. As we approached her house, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were closer to something both terrifying and liberating. Clara's determination was contagious, and I found myself entranced by her resolve to uncover the truth. "Jake, my grandfather always spoke in riddles about the past. He had a diary hidden in the attic," Clara said, her voice tinged with excitement, yet laced with trepidation. "I think it might have information about the cult and the girl who went missing." We stepped inside her modest home, the air thick with nostalgia and the faint scent of old books. Clara led the way to the attic, and the creaking of the wooden stairs echoed in the quiet house. I followed closely, my heart racing at the thought of what we might find. "Here it is," she said, pulling down a dusty box from a shelf in the attic. The box was adorned with cobwebs, as if it had been untouched for years. Clara's fingers trembled slightly as she opened it, revealing a collection of old items, photographs, letters, and finally, a weathered leather-bound diary. "Do you think it will have anything useful?" I asked, leaning closer, intrigued by the worn cover of the diary. "It has to," Clara replied, her eyes sparkling with hope. "If my grandfather knew something, it could lead us right to the answers we're looking for." We settled ourselves on the dusty attic floor, the light filtering through a small window casting a warm glow over the pages of the diary. Clara carefully opened it, and the musty smell of aged paper wafted through the air. Her fingers traced the yellowed pages as she began to read. "August 14th, 1965, she read aloud, her voice steady but tinged with a hint of fear. "The gatherings have become more frequent, and the whispers grow louder. I fear for her safety. She knows too much. What does it mean? She knows too much? I asked, my curiosity piqued. I don't know, but it has to be about the girl who went missing, Clara replied, her brow furrowing as she continued to read. There's more. As she flipped through the pages, I watched her expression shift from intrigue to concern. Jake, listen to this. I have seen the ritual, the blood moon approaches, and the cult's hunger grows. She has become their target, a pawn in their game. A chill ran down my spine. Ritual? What kind of ritual? I breathed, picturing the shadows that had loomed over us in Dusty Hollow. I don't know, Clara said, her voice low, almost a whisper, but it sounds serious. The cult's influence was stronger than we thought. I leaned in closer, wanting to absorb every detail. What else does it say? Clara turned another page, her eyes scanning rapidly. There's talk of a leader, a man of power in the town. He's described as charismatic, but there's something dark about him. My grandfather warned us to stay away from him, but he never explained why. Could that be the current mayor? I wondered aloud. The pieces were starting to connect, and I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Maybe, Clara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. There's something ominous about this whole thing. I can feel it. I watched as she flipped through the diary, her fingers lingering on a page with a faded ink sketch. Look at this, Jake, she said, pointing to the drawing. It depicted a gathering, a circle of hooded figures surrounding a woman. This must be one of their rituals. Why would anyone do this? How could they hurt someone like that? I asked, anger bubbling beneath the surface. I don't know, but it sounds like they were willing to go to extreme lengths to protect their secrets, Clara replied, her voice firm. And that girl, she must have been a threat to them. Just then, Clara paused, her expression shifting from curiosity to alarm. Jake, there's something else here. She turned to the next page, her voice trembling slightly. It says, I fear that if they find out I'm protecting her, I will be next. Protecting her? I echoed, trying to piece together the fragments. Who is she? I think it's the girl from the letter, the one mentioned in the diary, Clara said, her eyes wide with realization. My grandfather must have known her. A heavy silence enveloped us as the implications sank in. Do you think your grandfather was involved with the cult? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Clara replied, her brow furrowed with concern. But if he was, what does that mean for us? What if he was trying to protect her from the very people he was part of? Then we need to find out everything he knew, I said, determination surging within me. This girl's life could have been at stake, and we can't let that just slip away. Clara nodded, her eyes shining with conviction. You're right. We have to find more clues. There has to be something else in the diary. As we continued to read, the pages revealed snippets of the girl's life, her dreams, and her fears. She was a free spirit, Clara said, her voice softening. I can't believe someone would want to hurt her. Maybe she stumbled upon something she shouldn't have, I suggested. Or maybe she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Whatever the reason, she deserved better, Clara said, her tone resolute. We both do. This town has been haunted by these secrets for far too long. Suddenly, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Clara, do you think we're in danger? I asked, glancing around the attic, half expecting to see a shadow lurking in the corners. I don't know, but we've already uncovered too much, she said, her voice trembling slightly. We need to be careful. I agree, I replied, trying to suppress the rising anxiety. But we can't let fear stop us. We owe it to her and to ourselves to find out the truth. As the sun began to set, casting eerie shadows across the attic, I felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. Let's keep searching, I urged. There must be more in here that can help us connect the dots. Clara nodded, her expression one of fierce determination. Right? We'll find a way to uncover the truth, no matter what it takes. Together, we dove deeper into the diary, piecing together the fragments of a life lost too soon. Each revelation felt like a step closer to unraveling the mystery of Dusty Hollow and the sinister forces that had long overshadowed it. As I watched Clara, her passion igniting a fire within me, I knew we were in this together. "Jake," she said suddenly, her finger resting on a page. "Look at this. There's a name here. Someone who might know more about the cult and what really happened to her." "Who is it?" I asked, leaning closer to see. "It's a woman named Eliza," Clara replied, her voice steady. "She was mentioned in the diary as someone who visited my grandfather frequently. She might have been involved with the cult too, but she could also be our best chance at finding answers." "Then we need to find her," I said, a sense of resolve washing over me. "Let's figure out where she is and what she knows." Clara nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "We'll find her, Jake. We'll uncover every last secret until the truth is revealed." As we closed the diary, the weight of our mission settled in. The shadows of Dusty Hollow still loomed large, but with Clara by my side, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Together, we would confront the darkness and bring to light the truth that had long been buried. The chill of the night air wrapped around me as Clara and I made our way through the dense underbrush of the forest. The moonlight barely penetrated the canopy, casting eerie shadows that danced around us. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig sent a shiver down my spine. I glanced at Clara, her expression a mix of determination and fear. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. "We have to find out who's been following us. We can't let fear dictate our actions now." We had decided to confront the figure in the dark hoodie we had seen lurking around the library. It felt like a leap into the unknown, but if we were ever going to uncover the truth about the Graves family and the secrets of Dusty Hollow, we needed to take this risk. The clearing where we planned to meet was marked by a large, gnarled oak tree, its twisted branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "This is it," I said, stopping just short of the tree. "We'll wait here." Clara took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the darkness. "I just hope we're not walking into a trap." "Me too," I admitted, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "But we can't back down now. We've come too far." We settled down behind the oak, its massive trunk providing some cover. The tension was thick, and my heart raced as we waited in silence, the only sound being the rustle of leaves in the wind. Minutes felt like hours, and just when I thought we might be alone, a figure emerged from the shadows. "Jake? Clara?" The voice was low, almost hesitant. I squinted, trying to make out the features of the person who stepped into the moonlight. It was an older man, his face lined with age and worry. He pulled back his hood, revealing a head of silver hair and deep-set eyes that looked like they had seen too much. "Who are you?" I demanded, stepping forward protectively in front of Clara. "My name is Henry," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to hurt you. I've been watching you for a while now." "Why?" Clara asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "What do you want from us?" "Because I know what you're looking for," Henry replied, his gaze darting nervously around the clearing. "And I want to help you." "Help us?" I scoffed. "You've been following us. How do we know you're not part of the Seda? You could be working for them." "I'm not," he insisted, his voice growing more urgent. "I was once a member of that group, but I left when I realized the extent of their darkness. I can't let you go down the same path." Clara looked at me, uncertainty clouding her expression. "Maybe we should hear him out, Jake." I hesitated, torn between instinct and curiosity. "What do you know about Samuel Graves and the girl who disappeared?" Henry's expression shifted, sorrow washing over his features. "Samuel wasn't the monster you think he is. He was just a pawn in a much larger game. The real danger lies in the leadership of the Seda, even today." "Then tell us everything," I demanded, my pulse quickening. "We need to know who was responsible for that girl's disappearance." Henry took a deep breath, glancing over his shoulder before speaking again. "It was a long time ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. The girl, her name was Eliza. She was beautiful, vibrant, and caught the eye of many in the town, including some powerful members of the Seda. What happened to her? Clara pressed, her voice trembling slightly. She knew too much, he replied, his voice barely a whisper. She was close to discovering the Seda's true nature, the rituals, the sacrifices. They couldn't let her live. Samuel loved her, but he was too weak to protect her. I felt a flicker of anger rising within me. Weak? He should have done something. He must have known what they were capable of. Henry shook his head. It's not always that simple. The Seda had its claws deep in the town. They threatened him, manipulated him. Samuel was torn between love and fear. Clara stepped forward, her eyes wide with disbelief. But he didn't report her missing. He just let her disappear. The Seda made sure that no one would ask questions, Henry explained, his voice heavy with regret. They controlled the narrative. Those who tried to speak out, well, let's just say they were silenced. I clenched my fists, frustration bubbling inside me. So you're saying the whole town knew and did nothing? Not everyone, Henry countered. There were those who fought against it, who tried to break free from the darkness. But they were outnumbered, and one by one, they were silenced. Why are you telling us this? Clara asked, her voice softening just a bit. Because I see that fire in you, he said, his gaze locking onto mine. You both have the courage to go where others won't. You can uncover the truth. You can bring the Seda down. Why should we trust you? I shot back, still skeptical. Because I've lived with this burden for too long, Henry replied, his voice earnest. I can't change the past, but I can help you navigate the dangers ahead. You're not safe here. What do you mean? I asked, alarm bells ringing in my head. Someone is watching you, waiting for the right moment to strike. If they find out you're digging too deep, they won't hesitate to silence you. The weight of his words settled heavily on my chest. I exchanged a glance with Clara. We both understood the gravity of the situation. So what's the plan? I asked, my voice steadying. I can guide you to the old chapel, Henry said, his expression serious. It's where the Seda used to hold their meetings. If we can find something there, documents, artifacts, anything, it could provide the evidence you need to expose them. I felt a surge of determination. Let's do it. As we turned to head deeper into the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap, but the prospect of finally uncovering the truth about Eliza's disappearance and the Seda's hold on Dusty Hollow was too enticing to resist. Stay close, I instructed, glancing back at Clara. We need to be cautious. Henry led the way, his familiarity with the terrain evident. Clara walked beside me, her fingers brushing against mine as if offering silent support. Do you think we can really find something at the chapel? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hope so, I said, trying to inject some confidence into my words. If we can prove that the Seda was involved in Eliza's disappearance, it might be enough to bring them down. Just promise me we'll be careful, Clara said, her expression serious. I promise, I replied, though I could feel the tension building in my gut as we approached the chapel. The old building loomed ahead, its structure worn and crumbling, vines creeping up its walls like fingers trying to reclaim it. The windows were boarded up, and an unsettling silence hung in the air. Here we are, Henry said, his voice low. This is where it all went down. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. Let's find out what they've been hiding. As we stepped closer, I felt the weight of history pressing down on us. The air was thick with secrets, and I knew that whatever we found inside could change everything. Stick together, I said, glancing at Clara and Henry, both of whom nodded in agreement. With one last push, we moved toward the entrance, ready to face whatever awaited us inside the chapel, determined to uncover the truth that Dusty Hollow had buried for far too long. The air was thick with tension as Clara and I approached the old town hall, a crumbling structure that had seen better days. The mayor's office, where the heart of Dusty Hollow's secrets beat, was just ahead. I could feel my heart racing, each thump a reminder of the stakes at hand. The sun was setting, casting eerie shadows across the ground, as if the town itself was aware of the impending confrontation. "Are you sure about this, Jake?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her brow was furrowed, and I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. This wasn't just about the truth anymore. It was about confronting a man who held the power to destroy us with a single word. I nodded, trying to mask my own fear with determination. "We need to do this. The town deserves to know what really happened. We can't let the past keep haunting us." As we stepped inside the dimly lit building, the air grew colder. Dust motes danced in the fading light, and the wooden floor creaked under our weight. I could feel Clara's hand tighten around mine, and I squeezed it back reassuringly. We had come too far to turn back now. The mayor's office door was slightly ajar, and I could hear muffled voices inside. I exchanged a glance with Clara, silently agreeing that we would confront him together. We pushed the door open, the hinges protesting with a loud squeak that echoed ominously through the room. "Mayor Whitaker," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside me. He looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his face, quickly replaced by a mask of composure. "Jake Miller, Clara Thompson," he greeted, his tone dripping with false warmth. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "We need to talk," I replied, stepping further into the room. "About Dusty Hollow, about the graves, about the young woman who disappeared." The mayor's expression hardened, and I could see the flicker of something dangerous in his eyes. "I don't think it's wise to dig into the past, especially when it concerns sensitive subjects. You two are playing with fire." "Fire," Clara interjected, her voice rising. "What's so sensitive about the truth? People deserve to know what really happened to that girl. She deserves justice." The tension in the room thickened as the mayor leaned back in his chair, assessing us like we were mere pawns in a game he controlled. "You think you can waltz in here and demand answers?" he said, his tone condescending. "You're just kids playing detective. You don't understand the complexities of this situation." "Complexities?" I challenged, my pulse quickening. "You mean the complexities of covering up a crime? Of protecting a legacy built on lies?" His eyes flashed with anger, and I could sense the shift in the atmosphere. "You should be careful with your accusations, Jake. You're treading on dangerous ground. The town has a way of silencing those who don't know their place." I took a step closer, fueled by a mixture of fear and anger. "You're the one who doesn't know your place. The truth is bigger than any of us, and it's time the people of Dusty Hollow knew what you've been hiding." Clara's voice trembled slightly as she spoke, but there was a fire in her eyes. "We found the diary. We know the connection you had with her. She was involved with you, wasn't she?" The mayor's expression shifted again, this time to one of cold calculation. "You're playing a dangerous game," he said, his voice low and threatening. "I could have you both arrested for trespassing. You're meddling in matters far beyond your understanding. Go ahead and try." I shot back. "But know this, we won't stop until the truth comes out. You can't intimidate us into silence." He laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You think you're brave, but bravery without wisdom is foolishness. You have no idea what you're up against. The people of this town would rather keep their secrets than face the consequences of the truth." I felt a wave of determination wash over me. "Then we'll make them see. We'll expose you for what you really are. A coward hiding behind a facade of power." As I spoke, I could see the gears turning in the mayor's mind. He was calculating, weighing his options. "You're making a mistake, Jake," he warned, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You're too close to things you don't comprehend. This is a small town, and people like to keep their past buried." "I won't let you bury her anymore," I said firmly. "You think you can control everything, but you can't control the truth." Clara stepped forward, her eyes piercing into his. "You may have everyone else fooled, but we know the truth. We know about the rituals, the secrets. You can't hide behind your title anymore." The mayor's face twisted in anger, and for a moment, I was worried he might lash out. "You're playing with fire, and you'll get burned," he spat. The Seda has its claws deep in this town, and they won't take kindly to your meddling. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. We're not afraid of them. We're not afraid of you. The people deserve to know the truth, and we're going to make sure they do. His expression darkened, and I could see the threat behind his eyes. You think you're some sort of hero? You're nothing but a kid with a misguided sense of justice. You don't know what you're asking for. Maybe not, I admitted, feeling the weight of the situation. But if we don't stand up for what's right, who will? You've been lying to everyone, and we're going to expose you. The silence that followed was thick with tension, the air heavy with unspoken threats. The mayor leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. You think you're so clever, but you're just a pawn in a much larger game. I have friends, allies who will ensure that you regret this. I felt Clara's hand grip mine tighter, and I could see the fear in her eyes, but I also saw her determination. You can't silence us, Mayor Whitaker. We'll keep fighting until the truth is out. You can't hide behind your power forever. With a sudden, sharp movement, he stood up, knocking his chair back. Get out, he commanded, his voice booming. You think you can just waltz in here and dictate terms? This isn't over, Jake. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Maybe not, I replied, refusing to back down. But we'll find out. And when we do, you'll wish you had never crossed us. As we turned to leave, I could feel the weight of his gaze on my back, a mixture of fury and desperation. I knew we had struck a nerve. The mayor was rattled, and that was a good sign. We were getting closer to the truth with each step we took. Once outside, the cool evening air hit my face, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Jake, are we really doing this? Clara asked, her voice trembling slightly. I turned to her, feeling a surge of determination. We have to. The town deserves to know, and we can't let him intimidate us. We're not alone in this. We have each other, and we have the truth on our side. Clara nodded, her expression resolute. You're right. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We have to keep pushing forward, no matter what. As we walked away from the town hall, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but I knew we were on the right path. The truth was waiting to be uncovered, and we would face whatever came our way together. Dusty Hollow had long been haunted by its secrets, but we were ready to shine a light on the darkness, no matter the cost. And as long as we stood together, I believed we could break the chains of the past and finally set the town free. The air was thick with tension as Clara and I stood in the dimly lit chamber of the old church, the stained glass casting eerie shadows across our faces. We had just uncovered the truth behind the seedy underbelly of Dusty Hollow, and it felt as if the very walls were closing in on us. The confrontation with the mayor was imminent, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I exchanged a glance with Clara. "This is it, Jake," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "We need to be careful. He's not just some politician. He's been hiding his past for decades." I nodded, my mind racing. The weight of the knowledge we had unearthed felt heavy on my shoulders. The photograph Clara had found in her grandfather's journal burned in my mind. The image of the young woman locked in an embrace with the mayor, her face radiant and full of life, a stark contrast to the shadows that now loomed over us. "Remember," I said, trying to steady my nerves, "we need to stick to the facts. He's going to try to manipulate us, to twist the narrative. We can't let him." Clara took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing with determination. "I know, but we have to be ready for anything. He's desperate. Desperate men do desperate things." As we made our way to the mayor's office, the halls of the town hall felt eerily quiet. It was as if the entire town was holding its breath, waiting for the storm to break. I could imagine the townsfolk, blissfully unaware of the secrets that had festered beneath the surface for so long. "Jake," Clara said suddenly, stopping in her tracks, "what if he tries to pin this on us? What if he threatens us?" I looked into her eyes, seeing the flicker of fear that mirrored my own. "Then we stand our ground. We have the truth on our side. We can't let him intimidate us." We reached the mayor's office, the door looming in front of us like a gate to an unknown realm. I could hear muffled voices inside, a mixture of authority and arrogance that made my skin crawl. Clara placed a steadying hand on my shoulder, and I nodded, gathering my resolve. "Let's do this," I said, pushing the door open. The mayor looked up from his desk, a smile plastered on his face that didn't reach his eyes. "Ah, Jake, Clara, what a surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure?" His tone was smooth, almost syrupy, but I could sense the underlying menace. "Cut the pleasantries, Mayor," I said, stepping forward. "We know the truth about the Seda and your involvement in the disappearance of the young woman." His smile faltered, and I could see the gears turning in his mind. "You're mistaken, my boy. You really should be careful with such accusations. They can ruin lives." Clara stepped beside me, her voice steady. "Lives were already ruined, Mayor. You can't silence us anymore. We know about the photograph, about your connection to her. You were the last person seen with her before she disappeared." His expression hardened, and for a moment, the facade of the charming politician slipped away, revealing a man cornered and desperate. "You think you know everything, don't you? But there are things you don't understand. The past. It's not as simple as you think." "What happened that night, Mayor?" I pressed, my fists clenched at my sides. "Did you kill her to keep her quiet?" "Jake!" Clara exclaimed, her voice a warning, but I couldn't hold back. The anger boiled within me, fueled by the injustices we had uncovered. "Listen to me," the mayor said, his voice lowering, dripping with a mix of threat and persuasion. "You think you're heroes, but you're meddling in affairs that could destroy this town. Do you really want that on your conscience? People will get hurt. Innocent people. You need to back off before it's too late." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You think you can scare us into silence? We're not going anywhere. The truth needs to come out." Suddenly, the door swung open behind us, and in stepped a figure I least expected. Deputy Mills, her expression unreadable. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her eyes darting between us and the mayor. "Deputy Mills," Clara said, relief washing over her. "We need your help. The mayor has been covering up the truth about the disappearance. Enough!" the mayor snapped, his voice booming. "You're making wild accusations, and I won't stand for this insubordination in my office." Deputy Mills crossed her arms, her expression firm. "I've been looking into some of the things you've said, Jake. There's a lot of noise around this case, and it's not all adding up. But if you're saying the mayor is involved, I need to hear it directly." I glanced at Clara, who nodded encouragingly. "We found a photograph of the mayor with the young woman, the one who disappeared. It was in Clara's grandfather's journal. He was involved in a love affair with her, and we believe he had a motive." The mayor's face contorted with anger. "That's slander. You can't just come in here and throw around accusations without proof." "Proof?" I said, my voice rising. "You think we're the ones who need to prove something? You're the one who needs to explain why you were hiding her from everyone. Why you've perpetuated this cover-up for so long." Suddenly, Clara stepped forward, her voice steady. "I know you've done terrible things to protect your reputation, but the truth is coming out. We've already alerted the press about what we found. You can't silence us anymore." The mayor's expression shifted, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "You wouldn't dare. You wouldn't ruin your own lives for this story." "That's the thing, Mayor," I said, my voice calm but firm. "We're not afraid of you. You've already lost your power over us." In that moment, I could see the walls closing in around him. The bravado he had worn so confidently was crumbling. "You think this is just about you? This is about the entire town. You'll destroy everything. Maybe that's what it takes for Dusty Hollow to finally heal," Clara said, her voice unwavering. "You've been holding this town hostage with your secrets for far too long." Just then, the sound of sirens pierced the air outside, and the mayor's face went pale. "What have you done?" he hissed, his composure finally breaking. I straightened, a sense of triumph rising within me. "We did what we had to do. The truth matters more than your position. You can't keep running from your past." As the police stormed into the office, Deputy Mills stepped aside, allowing them to take charge. Mayor Graves, you're under arrest for your involvement in the disappearance of the young woman and for covering up the truth about the Seda. The mayor's face twisted in rage and desperation. You'll regret this. You have no idea what you're doing. I felt a surge of satisfaction as the officers cuffed him, leading him away. Clara turned to me, her eyes shining with a mix of relief and disbelief. We did it, Jake. We actually did it. Yeah, I said, still processing the whirlwind of events. But it's not over yet. We still have to face the fallout. She nodded, a smile breaking through her expression. But we're free now. The town can finally heal. As we stepped out of the office, the air felt lighter, as if the shadows that had loomed over Dusty Hollow for so long were finally beginning to lift. The truth had come to light, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of hope for the town and for my own family's legacy. We have a lot to do, I said, glancing at Clara. But together, we can help Dusty Hollow find its way back. Clara smiled, her determination shining brighter than ever. Together, she echoed, and I knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning of a new chapter for both of us.